Welcome to Compression, the quest to $100 million in just 1 year. Join me, your host, Logan Freeman, in this one-of-a-kind interactive podcast experience where I am on a quest to compress 3 years of achievement and production into 12 months. And no, the answer is not to just work harder. I'm bringing you not only ideas and concepts that are complete at the theoretical level, but they're also effective at the applied level. Look, guys, knowledge is not power. It is potential power. Knowledge plus massive strategic action equals power. We're talking about strategy, systems, accountability, all in real time. This is Compression. Welcome back to the Compression Podcast. What I'm really excited about this week is giving you guys an idea of how this podcast flow is going to go for the rest of the year. And no better time to do this than right now. January is always a very unique time for people who are out there hunting and killing because, after December 31, you start back at a big fat zero. And so, there's this kind of notion of having a little bit of anxiety, of pressure, of force being applied on you. That can be personal, or it can be from, look, I don't have any, income coming in. And that's why we dropped just today. This is January 22nd. The Finish Strong Fridays episode was all about diamonds. And, I always told people, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen, and diamonds are created by an immense amount of fire and heat and pressure. And that's why they're the hardest rock in the world, right? That's why diamond plated steel cuts through anything. So anyways, this week we're going to be breaking down, a lot about kind of how last week went, what my top goals were, what the top wins and losses were, the top learnings that we had. And we're going to set an intention for the next week. And I'm going to give you 3 things that I'm focused on for the next week to stay accountable to. There's a little bit of social proof here. There's a little bit of, hey, this is what I'm working on, and this is what I'm kind of going through. So this episode, we're always going to set the intention. So you're going to know with 5 minutes of listening to this show what the outcome is that you're going to get out of it. And if you don't want that outcome, great, go listen to another episode or a different podcast. But I'm giving you exactly what you're going to hear and learn about that. And this week is a great one because, I know we're 3 weeks into January in the first quarter of 2021, but had a big challenge in the business this week, which, threatened a lot of things. It threatened my personal, what I'll call well-being. It threatened a lot of pieces of how I was going about setting up my days and not letting this one thing really blow up my whole week. And I had to pivot and change and take massive strategic action. And we had an incredible outcome out of that. Literally 14 minutes ago, I got off the phone and we're finishing up what we need to do for this project. So without that being said, Jerome, this week, people are going to really get to see how to take on a challenge in real time. How I called you on a Tuesday and said, all right, man, this is what I'm going through. This is the scenario. I'm being raw, authentic, and open and honest. Where am I not seeing things? And I had to legitimately take my personal, what I'll call moral code and rip it away from the business, which is really hard to do to be able to stay objective. So I told you before we started recording that through that process, I was able to watch myself like a hawk, per se. And going through the situation that I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be difficult. I felt it as I was going through it. And I wanted to revert back to old practices, but it was time. It was time to be a diamond. It was time to step it up and try to do the best that I could. So long story short, that's what we're covering today. That's what you're going to get out of this episode. And the quote that I want to kind of start this this episode off of is just this. And it's something that we talk about a lot. And it's one of the O's in compressor. And it's I guess the only O in compressor, I suppose. And it's open to everything and attached to nothing.
Boom. Because
in this scenario, I thought I knew everything that was going on. I was rifled in. I knew that, I saw all perspectives, and then I talked to you, and I, completely was missing a whole piece of it. So long story short, open to everything, attached to nothing was basically the mental model that I attached myself to this week to kind of move forward. So that's what we're covering this week. If you want to, we can jump into last week's top 3 goals and kind of see how I did.
Yeah, I'm an outcome guy, right? So you set the intention for the week with the top 3.
Yep.
How do we do?
So on January 11th, I believe would be the right day in the journal, I said this: I must get this done this week. I must dominate my schedule, focus on profit-producing activities that are tied to most valuable priorities. I need to delegate, focus on high-value tasks, $1,000 and $10,000 tasks, and I need time to create. Pareto Principle. That was the first goal that I had this week, and last week, and I'm happy to say that I'm onboarding a new assistant to help me with email management. I implemented Do Not Disturb on my phone. I turned off email notifications. I turned off social app notifications. And even my wife is having a hard time getting a hold of me this week. And so I absolutely focused on making sure that I had time to create. And so the way that looks like for me is this. In the mornings, I get up and I create time, obviously, from 3:30 to 6:30 when the rest of the family is sleeping. They get up, I'm with the family, I get them to school. From 8:30 or 9 until noon, I am absolutely taking no meetings, and it is all about me, time for me to create. And what that means is I'm creating content, I'm writing, I'm working on high value tasks that are going to bring leads into the business. I'm working on speaking engagements. I'm creating them, finding that sweet spot, but which is that intersection of my greatest strength and my greatest passion. So I really feel great about the number one thing that I was trying to accomplish last week, and the ability to actually start implementing those things into my schedule. And I'll have to tell you, man, it was absolutely life-changing. It's been life-changing. I used to look to see, what's that little red number on my email? It's at 972. Okay, I got to keep it below 1,000 today. Then it gets up to 100 or 1,042, and now I'm freaking out, and I don't even see it anymore. It's unneeded.
It creates anxiety. It also will. You look for the dopamine hit because you want something to show up on there, right? And so you're checking it even though it doesn't make noise or shake. And so when you go to the space where, if we don't have a scheduled call, I call it going in the cave.
Yeah.
If we don't have a scheduled call, then it's not important in the frame or the context of what we were doing. And this week for you was a big week. I mean, the changes that you describe require focused effort. And I don't know if there was anything else in the business as important as getting this piece done. Just Absolutely. Because you had the time pressure. In addition to that, you probably could have ended up in spaces that you didn't really want to be in related to, we're going to get to that. So I won't pull the rabbit out the bag, but go in the cave, turn it off. The cave, man. You don't have to be available all the time. Just go in the cave and create. That's the special space.
The second thing that I was working on this week was we had a large and long retreat back in December for FTW. And my goal was to schedule and work on the retreat follow-up items, and also creating mini vacations for myself and for my family. and with specific people in my life. And so I failed a little bit on this because I did not schedule time to necessarily get the retreat follow-up done. But what I did do was find time on my business partners' calendars to work through follow-up items. So I took one step towards it, but I didn't necessarily get it all completed. The mini vacations piece, absolutely got it taken care of. I have January scheduled. We're going to Wonderscope, which is this fun little place for kids next weekend. I'm inviting one of my good buddies to bring his kids with us. It's his birthday today. Shout out to Ben Bianchino. Probably not listening to this, but that's okay. Happy birthday. And the second one was for Bella's birthday, where I took off a Monday, and I'm taking her with Ezra and Taylor to the Great Wolf Lodge, which is like this indoor water park for her birthday. So I have January and February taken care of. Now I got to look towards March, April, and May. But that's a different story. I'll continue to work towards that. So I did hit that one, which I'm very excited about. And the last piece of this one was a big push for us right now is in this triangle of business. You have traffic, conversion, and economics. Traffic is what I do on a regular basis. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. It's speaking, it's talking, it's connecting. Okay. And then it gets to conversion where okay, you've done all of those things. How are you staying in touch with people? How are you warming them up to continue to want to follow you? And that's the piece that I'm missing in our business right now. And so I have been talking to 6 or 7 different vendors about creating a masterclass series that's evergreen. And then it has a email nurturing campaign behind that. And I found finally the right copywriter and person that can also work through our system, which is ActiveCampaign. And we're really getting hyper focused on making sure our lists are segmented, tagged, and triggered to make sure that people are always getting communication from us and warming that up. So I do not have to be on 55 calls a week. I'm on 10 calls that are extremely warm and ready to be dialed in. So very excited about the email funnel and the sales conversion piece of that. And so I've got a proposal. I talked to 6 or 7 vendors. I've got the right lady to help us with it. It's expensive, but I think she's the right fit for us. And I just got to get the business partners on board. So super pumped about that. So I didn't hit all of the second one, but it was a lot. It was probably 10 goals inside of one.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up towards the end. Like, is the great thing. Let's go back to the first one because I think you did something really good there. Right? You took care of the whole quarter on the mini vacation thing, right? So that's done. It's on the calendar. It's a priority. And you're going to stick to the calendar because Absolutely. That's how it works, right? So that's taken care of. That's gone. Move to the next thing. The email sequence, the nurture sequence, like you can do a ton sending emails, even if the people don't open them. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to really encourage with the copywriter, make sure she writes in your voice.
Yes.
Right. It's got to be coming from you. And I can show you some other tips and tricks when you get deeper into it that really make it feel warm, because that's something big for you guys. It's, we're owner operators, but we still have time for you and we really care about you. And what a lot of people have done that I see is they do something that's really robotic, not touch, and with your high level of individualization and customizing it for the person to make them feel great.
Yep.
If you do that being robotic and cold and informal, then when you get to the person and actually have the meeting, they're going to be confused because it's not the same person. And so that alignment is going to be major for you. And you're doing a great job with the social where it feels like you for every post every time. And so make sure this comes over with the emails.
Yep. Absolutely. Great tip. And I'll make sure that comes through. Be very active in that process. Thanks for that. And then the third thing that I said I must get done last week was, my focus. Everybody knows that I focus on virtues, and I live my life through prudence and moderation. Prudence, which is discerning the best means to the right end, and then temperance and moderation, wisdom, justice, and fortitude. And so the focus for me this quarter is on temperance and moderation. And so, if people know me, I'm a pretty intense, obsessive type of guy. I've shared this multiple times on shows, but I had obsessive compulsive disorder, very high level, I would say, when I was younger, until my mom took me to a neuro analyst, a neuro doctor, and I started to understand that I could impact the way that I felt, depending on the story that I told myself. And so temperance for me this week is a few things, or last week was I wanted to make Taylor feel loved on a regular basis and not feel like I'm just checking in and seeing, okay, hey, how was your day? All of these things, really feeling like we are connected. The second one was be spontaneous and have fun. And so being temperate with my ability to set boundaries on my work. Again, that's tied back to the first goal of dominating my schedule. The third piece of temperance is eating and drinking. Jerome, when you visited, I like to have a few beers and I like to eat really, delicious food. That's all fine in moderation. And so, that was a big proponent of, health for me, because I have my faith, family, fitness, and future. And then the last one, and this is me being raw and authentic and vulnerable, is a man out there in the 21st century, a married man, trying to be as good as I can to my wife, is protecting my eyes. And this is something I don't think I've heard anybody talk about and be vulnerable about, but I haven't been on Instagram. I haven't been on any website I shouldn't have been on. And, that's something that, loving Taylor is a huge piece of that. Not feeling like, hey, your wife should look a certain way and you are, coveting other things, right? So it pulls back into my faith. It pulls back into my love for my wife. And I'm really proud to say that I've put triggers. I've been studying habits, and I've put triggers. When those things start to happen, what do you do? When you've had that second beer, do you need the third one? When you're not feeling as connected with Taylor, what do you do? Where do you get that good feeling of, or fleeting feeling? So I've put triggers in my life, and I'm happy to say that the last 2 weeks, really, and we'll talk about this again next week, that has been incredible. And you know what that has done? It has created discipline, which has created freedom. I'm letting go of certain things that maybe brought pleasure in the past that would tie up my time, my energy, my focus. And it's because I don't want the compound effect working in the negative piece. And so, on that front of things, being a temperate man, I read 3 or 4 books about temperance every single morning, getting other people's perspectives on it, stoicism, obviously, but also, reading a lot of Catholic books on virtues and things like that. And it's fun to get a lot of different people's perspectives. And it's also very easy to say, I'm not doing a bad job on that, but really, are you? Let me pull up your Instagram feed. Let me hit that little search button and see what images pop up. Let me see that search history. Come look at mine. I know I have not been perfect in the past, but I guarantee that algorithm's like, hey, where is this guy? What's he doing?
So look, man, this is outstanding. Most people won't go here. One thing on the temperance that I think really makes it a little bit easier is having to opt in instead of having to opt out.
That's right.
So if it's a couple of beers, if you're drinking 2 beers a night, then it's 2 in the fridge, everything else room temperature, because it makes it less desirable.
Exactly.
Right? And then it's like, oh, well, now I got to go get them, put them in the refrigerator, or not even there. Maybe you got to go to the store to get it. You're probably not going to go through the effort to get it, right?
That's right.
Think about things that way. Turning off your notifications keeps you off Instagram. The one thing I would say,
don't even have Instagram on my phone, actually.
Right? So that takes it to a new level. For me, and this is something that I did a while back, is I followed 20 people or less on Instagram.
Yep.
Right. I was scrolling through my feed last night. I want a Lamborghini Aventador, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get Lamborghinis and Audis in my feed. And I get wolves. Those are the things that show up in my feed. I was scrolling through it last night, and it was just that over and over and over again. And you can either use the social to reinforce the things that you want to achieve and accomplish,
Absolutely.
or you can use it to distract you. And so I want to use it for a force for good. Every now and again, there were some quotes, but that's kind of the point, right? Is
Yep.
you can censor your feed. And what about you can censor your feed so that it's moving you to it when you actually are spending the time doing the thing. It's actually helping move you closer. The self-awareness with the wanting Taylor to feel loved and putting the extra attention there, so few people, especially at your age, are willing to make that type of investment without some complaint, without some gripes, without a threat to go to counseling or something else. It's just like, no, just leave me alone. I want to work. And the thing that I think is probably more impressive about the whole thing is what you were dealing with in the business could have totally engulfed you. And you could have forgot about everybody else and tried to figure out how you're going to solve this problem that you couldn't rely on anybody else to take care of for
That's right.
you. And the fact that you doubled down, no, these are my things, and here's my highest priorities, and all this stuff falls underneath, allows you to look yourself in the mirror, especially when you still accomplish the goal on the backside, and say, I can actually live out my values. I don't have to adjust. I don't have to switch back. So that has to feel good. And I mean, I know you don't do a ton of celebration, but you absolutely should pat yourself on the back for that. Because, you know, when we talked about it last week and we knew what the two outcomes really were, and A was a whole lot easier than B, and you had to go do B.
That's right.
We still knew what the outcome was. And so hopefully that released a little bit of the anxiety, but now you've got the proof, right? Now you can go in the cookie jar next time something comes up.
That's right.
And say, you remember when I did it like this. And whether you 10x'd it and it's a bigger problem or not, doesn't really matter. What matters is that you've got the proof and the belief that these things can be done. And so outstanding there, dude.
Absolutely,
really,
man.
Really.
The other piece with Taylor that I'll say, and this is to every man or woman who's married out there or has a significant other, don't have to be married, whatever, you know, partner, is I'm very intentional about things that I can do to make her feel that way. And you guys might call me crazy, but my wife gets flowers every week. Every single week, she receives flowers delivered to her. I've already calculated out how much it's going to cost me for the next 50 years. It's $177,000, 274. And, you know, I'm willing to do that for her because I know the outcome of what that does. And it's not just about flowers, right? It's about, hey, you had to go find somewhere else to deliver flowers, something new, something fresh. She gets a card with it every single week. And this really stemmed from the fact that not that she asked me to do this, but I get the exposure to guys 15, 17, 25 years older than me that are still struggling on their third wife. You know, they don't talk to their kids. On the outside, they look very successful. Right. But when you really start to dial down, these guys have not done any of this work. None of it. And
it's hard, man.
It's very hard. And they also prioritize golf, the Carriage Club, drinks with buddies, and all of these other things. That is a privilege to me. That is a privilege. And Taylor gives me that privilege every once in a while because I ask for it. And I could do it more if I wanted to, but I don't because she knows where my priorities are. With that being said, the big piece, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is I've seen what it looks like when you don't prioritize this. And I've seen the outcome of that. And that does not look good to me. I see these guys who own all of this real estate outright by themselves in Kansas City, running around, doing everything themselves. Sure, some people know them, but their outreach, their impact is in their little circle. And frankly, their businesses are running their lives. Their lives are not running their businesses. And so I will absolutely not ever threaten my personal life based on what's going on in my business. And my business will be built around what my life is like. And that's why my brand is all about living free, because I'm 30 years old. I'm a young guy, but guess what? I live free on a regular basis. And if something needs to happen in the business, fantastic. It will happen, but not before I focus on my faith and my family in my fitness. So the temperance around that, I think, is the big key that I'm trying to get through here.
Yeah.
So some of the biggest wins from, the last week, man, it really comes down to supporting Taylor, making her feel special, helping her out around the house. She has a full-time job. She works hard. She makes a great living and has a very, respectable position at her company. Not only that, she's cooking dinner. She's making sure this big ass house is clean. She's getting French doors installed. She's getting all of these things that I have asked her to do. And she's still working full time at a director level position. So long story short on that is I really felt supportive the last week on, hey, what do you need? Like, how are you doing? What can we do? What can I do to kind of help you set yourself up for success? So that was just a huge win and my number one for sure. I had a couple big speaking engagements last week, Jerome. I don't take a lot of speaking engagements, but working on some new slides for Yona's meetup, I think that really landed well on people. I took the compression kind of methodology and presented that to folks. And I think I was very hard on myself because it was the first time I had really presented on it. But I stopped looking at the slides. So you don't need that stuff. It's inside of you. What are you doing why are you going off these slides? You don't need to do that. And once I did that, it was like a trigger in my head. And so I had that speaking engagement. I had Hutch's speaking engagement. I landed 2 other large multifamily panel speaking engagements. So that was just really, really awesome to see that, hey, yeah, sure, this guy is good at talking about, goals and systems and accountability. But people are starting to say, we also want to hear, how he scaled his business and his philosophy on multifamily investing. So I landed a couple more speaking engagements too, which was a big testament of working on those high value tasks that I was talking about. Because if I'm going to do one of those speaking engagements, I want to bring it and I want to bring something fresh and unique.
Let's talk about those a little bit, right? Because those can be a time suck if you're not careful.
Yes.
Right. Because especially when you're preparing your own content, right?
Yep.
Just make sure that if it makes sense to delegate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's but so much time that you delegate that, even if you're providing the content, but you shouldn't be making things look pretty, right? You content on the slide, great. Make it look pretty. It takes a lot of time and the squeeze isn't worth it. And
that's right.
Somebody can get it done for pretty cheap. On the scale, I think you're at a place where you've got to be really thoughtful about the scale. How many people are going to be there?
Yep.
And what type of people are going to be there? Are they in the audience? Because the outcome of that is, I guess, 1 or 2 things: investors in your deal,
sure,
or people who want to be clients for brokerage.
Yep.
And if it's not one of those 2 people, it's hard to say, I'm going to take this hour, right? An hour of productive time and go spend it hanging out.
Usually in the evenings, actually. These are usually, and that's time away from my family. So very intentional about making sure that, hey, has this person done something for me in the past? Okay, I need to give back. Or is it the right audience? And some of those, I could have 5 of these a week if I really wanted to. I'm not going to do that. So being targeted and rifled in is super important on that front. And the last win, man, is actually implementing the Pareto Principle into my life. So we kind of talked about what I must get done. That first one is dominating my schedule. I actually made moves to actually make changes of how I was living my life on a regular basis to implement those principles. And so I really felt like, and I think it's frustrating for some people that, want to get a lot of my time, but they say, that 20% of your activities lead to 80% of your results. And if you go down even one more, you square that, 4% leads to your 64% of your results. So what am I doing 4% of the time? I got to give 4% of my schedule to those tasks. And so really focusing on that. And the first part of it is trying to figure out what those are, right? That's not easy either, but at least have enough data to look back into the past and say, yep, that just feels good, and that just is something that you're doing. It's not necessarily leading to anything. So that was a huge win, is implementing the Pareto's Principle into my business, into my schedule. actually looking at high value tasks and saying, okay, where are you doing those? And sticking to your schedule is another big piece that I have in the past had a hard time. And that's why I eliminated all those notifications and on my phone. So those are some of the biggest wins from the last week.
So if you had to talk about the 4, because I think you've gotten to this place where you know what your ideal day looks like and you know what the 4% or the 20% is, what are those activities? What are those activities you're doing between 9 and 12 every day?
Yeah, so some of it is actually communicating with, high level investors. So I actually might be in person in that time period. It might be me. I've learned that a high value task is getting Logan in front of those people. A lot of guys that I do business with in Kansas City, they don't do the Zoom. They don't do phone calls. They might do a phone call for like 5 minutes and say, all right, man, I'll see you next week or whenever you want to connect. But these are referrals that have come from previous relationships that it's now time for me to get in front of. So some of those are breakfast meetings and coffees that I'm actually going and seeing people. That's a very high value task if they have already been filtered through, which is really important. These are not first meetings. Right. These are referrals and business meetings. So that's one. The second is refining my message. And so, as you know, I have a weekly blog. I want to kind of give some people some insight into my business. I do not write most of those. I direct the content, but I do not write that content all the time. There's an idea. Say, hey, I need some research around this. Let's put this into a post, but I'm not spending my time writing. I'm not a copywriter. I'm not a blog writer. So I actually, study my own blogs. Believe it or not, I think I have some of the best content in the industry on investing and around that piece. So I study those talk tracks and then I create bullet points on calls that I can touch on. So that's one of them. The other one is actually writing. So I do write market commentary for the Kansas City market on a regular basis. So I know what's going on. I can talk to people who are interested in Kansas City. What's the population growth? What's the unemployment rate? What are all these different things and why? So that's a big question that I always kind of refining. So it's really about messaging, marketing, and automation. So for me, it's also really thinking through strategically what this nurturing campaign looks like and how that's going to be set up. So I might be talking to a vendor that I think can help me with that. And so just making sure that I'm talking with them. So those are some of the business things that I'm doing during that period of time. I usually also get a workout in that period of time. That's a very high value task for me, or I'm getting my steps in, consuming some content from Perry Marshall, Donald Miller, Jocko Willink, somebody that I really, really respect, because I do not ingest a ton of content from outside forces in the commercial real estate industry just because that's a scapegoat for me. What I need to do is create my own thoughts around it. So finding my unique voice has been my goal on that front. So I take those 3 hours and it's so funny because the high value, task stuff, it just goes by that fast, and I'm very excited about that, but also I wish those hours would slow down just a little bit.
Sometimes, for sure. Before we move to the next space, I was thinking about our conversation briefly about Clubhouse. You were talking about creation, and I just wonder is the marketing in place in order to get the people to the house?
Yeah.
Right? And if not, then do we tweak that, or does it just not fit? I mean,
yep.
You got to allocate some resources to get people to the place because they don't know you're there.
Yeah.
And so, that part has probably been the toughest thing for me, is just making the audience aware that this thing exists and explaining to them what they're going to get in order for giving up their time.
For me on Clubhouse, this is an insider tip. I read a couple articles on it and I'm trying to get my own Clubhouse, right? Like my own, whatever they call it. And once you get that room and it's named a certain thing, you start showing up in the searches. And that's where I think the real value is, if you own one of those rooms. But the only way you do that is by actually using the app. So I'm going to give that a couple more weeks. We've been hosting one on Fridays. It's fun to talk about stuff for 30 minutes. It goes by really fast. And the guy I'm doing it with is an absolute shark when it comes to whatever he's doing, with the deferred sales trust stuff. So it's fun to learn from him on that front too. So I'll just keep kind of measuring where that was, but I had nobody on there today, or maybe 2 people the whole time. And so I don't know. We'll just
have to market it, because the thing is, it's live.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's no different than these meetups. You've got to tell people. And I know for pretty certain that I saw the one post announcing that it was happening.
That's it.
But I haven't seen any push. And
if
people don't see it 6 to 9 times, they're not coming.
So those are some great wins, man. I think what people really want to hear is the losses. And so what I'm going to jump into now is really one major loss for the last week. And this loss is it's hard to kind of pinpoint where the loss happens, but I'll break it down very quickly. Man, I'm just looking how red my ears are. My gosh.
Cool.
That just looks weird. If you're watching this, I'm sorry, but man, I just noticed how hot my ears are. Maybe that's a type of an indication that we're in the compression zone, is your ears get really hot. I got all that. I'm becoming a diamond over here. My ears are turning red. I'm getting hot over here. Anyways, sorry for the guys and gals that are just listening on Spotify and iTunes. I apologize. You can't see, but now you have a reason to go look at my red ears. Anyways, long story short, man, I think that what happened was, we were banking on, this deal. I've been working on this awesome off-market deal for 5 months or so, direct to the seller in the heart of the Midtown, right down the road from the streetcar. Just a great path of progress, great price on the deal. A lot of good things happening in this corridor. And, I had an investor that was lined up for the whole thing. And it turns out that 5 days before close, expectations from one side or the other were not on the same page. And I had at least 3 months to get that right. And so, the biggest loss was, this is someone that I still respect and have a lot of friendship with. I hope to continue to rebuild that. But, at the end of the day, they dropped out of the deal 5 days before close, and I have to replace close to $600,000 worth of equity for a project to continue to move it forward. So really the loss comes down, I think, to me now talking through it is, expectations were not met from day one in writing. And I know I hear that all the time, like get it in writing. I didn't do it. So that's a loss. The second thing is I didn't do it to the level that I needed to, I suppose, because we thought we did, but we did not. The second piece is being, when that happened, plan B had to happen and you have to pivot. And that basically threw, everything else that was going on and plan for the week for a little bit of a loop. I was able to continue to do a lot of high value tasks, but back in the back of my mind, I always knew, hey man, you got $600,000 to raise. What are you doing? We finally got it done. It's taken care of. We're going to close the deal. It's going to move forward. We're all good. But I guess the loss is it didn't need to get to that point and it didn't need to happen. And so that was a big challenge on a lot of different fronts for me this past week that, frankly, I think we probably could have addressed 60 days ago and not 5 days before close.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts and feelings and opinions about it.
Yep.
And I've shared some of them. I'll share the more tame ones with the listeners. And
sure.
I think the big one is anytime you have a partner, and people talk about this with family offices and institutional investors a lot. Anytime you've got one person holding that much of the cards, they can, at the last minute, if you are not well networked and capitalized as an operator, pull the deal from you and leave you in a space where you're in a lurch.
Yep.
You guys, when we first became aware that there was potential for this to happen, knew that you had other options. And this is why it's really important to cultivate a network and be able to go to that network in the times that you need them and have confidence that they're going to show up for you. And so this is why some people say, hey, when syndication makes complete sense, and I'm a joint venture guy, but syndication makes complete sense because no one person can kill your deal.
That's right.
On the flip side of that, dealing with one person makes it really, really, really simple. And so, you can go either way.
Yep.
This one didn't work out that way. I think you would still do a deal with these folks. You just move a little bit further. in hindsight, the thing that I didn't think about last week, and I'm glad we're back here this week talking about it, is they didn't have any money in the game, right? And the structure of the deal may have prevented that from happening, but I think it's extremely important whenever you're doing that is to make sure that they've got some money to lose. Because right now, they can decide to walk away and they don't really have any impact, right? If the deal doesn't get done, oh, well, not our fault. But if they've got some money in the table, some risk capital is what I call it, pursuit capital, then they may think twice about that.
Sure.
And it should be probably commensurate with whatever their ownership is in the deal. Right? Because they were literally going to leave you to hold the bag, all of the bag, if you couldn't get it done. We knew you could get it done, but they were going to leave it for you. And for me, that's really inconsiderate, and I'm just a guy, once I shake my hand or shake your hand, then it's done. So totally. I would have a lot of pause, and, we can only assume that people have good intentions, but I know that everybody doesn't. And so being the person who is only really interested in caring about you and how you're impacted by it, I do have to say that I don't know if they were totally in the game.
Sure.
And you can assess it. I don't know them. I don't even know their name or have a relationship with them. But you being the face of the organization and working, you're in the middle, right? Yeah. You got them here with the cash. You've got the rest of the team over here ready to operate. And you're the matchmaker putting the things together.
Right.
So that's really tough for you. And, still though, you ran through it. You knew you were going to run through it, and hats off to you for getting it done. And you had plan B, but you also probably had C, D, and E. Yeah. And you were able to make B work. And absolutely, for me, that's really exciting. Again, cookie jar, right? Yep. Yeah, I've been here before. I don't want to go back here, but I've been here before. I know what it feels like. I'm not scared.
Yep. So that's wins, losses, and just so folks know kind of what I'm doing on a regular basis, because you mentioned some of those high value tasks. I track, and if you're watching, you can see this. I track this on a daily disciplines journal here. So basically, I'll run through kind of the 10 things on a regular basis that I'm working to do. I don't do every single one of these per day, but it has an amount that I'm working to hit towards. So praying and spending time in the Gospels, morning routine, walk 8,000 steps, work out 3 times a week for 15 to 30 minutes, drink 200 ounces of water, temperance. So I ask myself, would the best version of myself do this? Wind down around 4 p.m. and set boundaries on your business. Work on $1,000 and $10,000 tasks. Make Taylor feel special and loved through patience, presence, and positivity. That's one of the P's. That is the P of being a compressor. Own the transitions, release the tension, and bring the intention between your meetings. So those are things on the daily disciplines list that I am check marking off. And last week, if you guys want to hold me accountable, I had a goal of having 58 total tasks that I was doing, or disciplines that I was doing. And I hit 52 out of 58. So, 6 that I did not hit on a regular basis that I was trying to. So just kind of giving people a little bit of a marker of how intentional I am about focusing on these actual disciplines that we're talking about. And then, working towards the upcoming week. These aren't going to change a ton because this is what I'm really focused on. Yep. But this week, it did change a little bit what I was focused on this week. So we're now moving into the next section of, okay, we reviewed last week's goals, top wins, top losses. How'd you do on your daily disciplines? What I was struggling with. Now we're setting that intention and what I'm trying to get done this upcoming week. And, obviously, number one was fix the Penn Valley Apartments situation, and that's what I did. And I'm proud to say that it's, we'll talk about this next week, but I'm proud to say that we're getting it done. The raise is done and we're moving forward, got the debt locked in. Property management actually took the keys from the other owner on Wednesday when we were supposed to close. So my property management company is already working on those things. So that was number one goal. The second was continue to work on the retreat follow-up items and items that you're working on with the 1031 exchanges. So $10,000 tasks. I blocked, I'm going to make this proclamation. I couldn't do this until February, but in February 15th to the 26th, I have no meetings scheduled, and I have blocked every single day to work on $1,000 and $10,000 tasks until I get everything that I have set down in the retreat follow-up items, which, it goes all the way from setting up the email marketing to having a family office and private equity event here in the third quarter. So big, high dollar type of items. So I'm excited about that. I blocked legitimately 2 weeks. I might not need all the time, but that's what I'm working on. And then the third was temperance again. Would the best version of myself do this? So that's what I was focused on for this upcoming week. And I am pretty excited to kind of work through some of the top wins and losses of this week. But, Jerome, we've talked for dang near an hour now. I'm sure people are probably like, holy cow, they just went through a lot of information. But what I guess on this first weekly flow show, kind of what we're trying to accomplish is this is that interactive piece of this podcast. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a lag, on when these come out, maybe a week or so. But that's just from an editing standpoint. And, so one thing that we will do now, I guess, is we'll go through the $100 million goal. We are sitting at 4.2 million out of 100 million done. In the pipeline, we have another 26 million either under contract or very close to being under contract. So we're tracking this, on the website. So you can go to compressionpodcast.com and there's a live goal tracker on where we're tracking on those transactions. And anybody that wants to reach out and learn more about those transactions, you absolutely can. But we've already closed a $4.2 million project. Next week or the week after, we've got a $2.5 million project closing. And then in February, it's going to be a monster month. We've got close to $15 million of real estate closing in February. So long story short, all of that's uploaded live on the Compression Podcast website. And if you want to get the resources that Jerome and I are talking about right now and working through how we set our years up, you just head on over and become a member, become a compressor. You can start becoming a diamond, and the way that you do that is you go and sign up as a membership where you're going to get a bonus episode that Jerome and I launched, and it's fire. You can't get that anywhere else. It's there. It's unlisted on YouTube, and you're going to get all the resources that we're working towards. And so that's the first weekly flow show. We'll continue to refine this, maybe break it down just a little bit more and focus a little bit less on me, maybe a little bit less on me, but I hope it was valuable, Jerome.
No, I think it's extremely valuable. Most people don't know what it's like to be coached and actually review their week.
That's right.
It's going from one thing to the other. So there's no opportunity to reflect and make adjustments and pivot and figure out where they're making their time and how to shuffle the deck and reprioritize. And you do this consistently for 6 months, your whole world changes. So
absolutely.
Let's do it, man.
So we've got some awesome things coming in the pipeline, guys and gals that are listening. Thank you for all of this support. We've got some great reviews going on the show already. Share this with somebody. We're not selling anything. We're just here going through this interactive podcast experience where Jerome is helping me elevate my game. Now, if you do want to learn about Jerome and get a little bit of time with him, reach out to Jerome.
Good luck.
I don't even know if he has any time.
I don't have time. I am full. I am only working with Logan. You don't understand. We talked about this in early January. I just got off a call. I've had 2 calls today. It's just insane, dude. There's a waiting list. There's people who were talking about starting coaching in December, January, and now February. They're going to be sorely disappointed when they show up. And it's okay. If somebody decides to cycle out, then we can move them in. But no, it's at a premium now, dude. And of course, I still have to spend the time on myself too, so I can continue to elevate. So, yeah, man.
Thank you, man, for elevating us. Thank you for elevating all of the listeners, and most importantly, thank you for elevating me and working through everything that we went through this week. Until next time, guys, become a diamond. Become a compressor, and that is a wrap. Hey, compressors, if something you heard struck you, made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, good. head on over to compressionpodcast.com. And then you can also subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts at. If you feel inclined to, please leave us a review. It's obviously helpful. But instead, I'm going to call you out today. I'm going to call you out and make sure that you do your part, sharing this message by sharing it with one person that might need to hear what we talked about today. Be great. Nothing else pays.